on to the final deputation, which is Mr. Patel, Indrajit. Are you available and online?
I am, yes.
Good, lovely. I can't quite see you yet. Yes, there you are. Thank you. Right, councillors, any questions for? I've got Councillor Morgan first to ask, and then Councillor Locker. Councillor Morgan.
Deputation, I found it very interesting. One thing I picked up was you said that not all of the people who shop where your businesses are actually live in a local area. They travel from, distances away from it. It'd be good if you could just expand on in terms of what challenges the LTN has created in your area and why that's preventing businesses from flourishing there.
Okay, so I think that it would be reasonable for me to say that people come to Tooting in about 10-20 mile radius. Some of them even come from Europe to come to Tooting. People from Netherlands, etc., who come to basically the smart shopping centre in Tooting. I mean, Tooting's had an international coverage in the last 3-4 years, and we get visitors in Easter time from Netherlands and from all sorts of parts of Europe. So people come, they come and stay with friends or neighbors, and then they shop in the area. So, I mean, a 10-20 mile radius is a norm.
Okay. And how have the changes which were implemented on the road, why has that affected your business in this way?
Well, there are two aspects. The first aspect is the LTNs had a huge number of unintended consequences. And I think nobody's looked at that, and nobody's looked at the cost of it. To give you an example, a pharmacy which delivers prescription, there were examples that 50% of the prescriptions couldn't be delivered. And there were examples, there were a lot of NHS-based examples. There were also issues about who picks up the cost, who picks up the loss that incurred. You speak to any business along our road, and we are articulating that survey, and you speak to any business along our road, and they are absolutely horrified at what has happened. They are incurring huge losses. And I think partly it is also to do with TfL and the changes that TfL have introduced. We are all for environmental issues. We are all for, the cyclists having some sort of an advantage. But there are huge issues. And it doesn't follow that we have safety on our roads at, on the TfL kind of roads we've got, and the restrictions we have. Now, this is a huge economic burden at the moment, and to find that we have to go 50 yards to take 50 boxes, and when you are single-handed or when your staffing is quite low, it is a huge burden. And I think that nobody realizes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think
how bad it is.
Yeah, you're putting across very well, Mr. Patel. Can I move on to some other questions? Yeah. We've got a few and time is going past. So I've got Councillor Locker and then Councillor Loveland. Councillor Locker, I think you fell down twice.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't think it had gone through. Thank you very much, Mr. Patel, for a really expansive and comprehensive report back to us. I just wondered if you had any actual feedback from your customers, and whether or not you or the businesses in Tooting had any thoughts about perhaps getting views of your customers about what they thought about things, whether or not it made it easier for them to shop or not, maybe perhaps doing a survey of what the customers think about it.
Yes, so at the moment we are taking some of the residents' views, but I think you raise a very good question. We should do a sort of a short survey of the wider clientele, but I think this is the wrong time to do it now because half of our town will be closed from tomorrow. So, but I think we certainly will provide evidence of what is the resident view. Remember, Tooting Town Centre has got people from vast backgrounds. A lot of people have not been able to express their opinions. I think there are lots of sort of social media and internet-based kind of feedbacks, which miss out the old lady on Covic Road, or we miss out the actual residents who may not be expressive to the council in different ways. So we will be articulating some of that in a few weeks' time to you.
Okay,
Right,
thank you.
thank you. I've got Councillor Loveland next, and then Councillor Rigby, and then Carpenter. Please be, good, succinct questions, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mr. Patel. I mean, it must be tough at the moment, and I was particularly struck reading the additional submission from Aradhana about how it's hit business. I mean, part of me wonders how much of that is the fault of what we've seen in terms of the LTNs and the A24 intervention, and how much is the fact that COVID-19 is having a big impact on retail business, particularly on high streets. I also was struck when I read the comments from Aradhana that there's a lot more that needs to be thought about in terms of Tooting and investing in Tooting, and I think that's an important point to make in terms of the bigger picture. But my question is, I wonder, have you been involved in any dialogue with TfL directly? Because I know they are making changes. Some of the ones have come out. I know that there's been some thinking about parking inside roads. Have you been involved in any dialogue with TfL officers? Have you indeed contacted, I wonder, our local assembly member, Leonie Cooper, who I know, if you haven't, would be very happy to hear from you and understand what the issues are. Thank you.
Yes, so I think it's not myself personally, but we have people who are in touch with TfL. They so in terms of the feedback, etc., they are being given. One of my colleagues has met Councillor Cooper. I haven't myself, but I think that the problem is so huge that it is not an issue about what can you do. It's a problem which is not solvable other than a suspension. The amount of chaos we have on our road every day, ambulances which can't get through, we have buses which can't double up their time reaching their destination. It's beyond talking. It's now beyond. It's reached a stage where there is no other option but suspension. From the business point of view, you ask any businessman, they are going to tell you that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Rigby, and then Councillor Carpenter, and then we'll move on.
Okay, I've got what. So the bike lane was put in 10 years ago by the mayor, who was then Boris Johnson, and it was hugely controversial at the time. I know that in the consultation back then, and you'll probably remember this, Mr. Patel, only one business was supportive of the red route becoming a bike lane. And I was looking through the consultation actually back then and looking at the comments, and it feels like history is repeating itself. It was the same comments about how it was going to impact businesses.
Councillor Rigby, what question?
So I'm getting to it, don't worry. It feels like history is repeating itself almost. Do you feel that, do you remember the experience back then, and were any of the fears about parking being removed, because it took away so much parking when that bike lane went in 10 years ago? Can you remember that experience versus this one, and how is it different apart from COVID?
I think the bike lane was not all that valid on what was Tooting, Upper Tooting Road and Tooting High Street. However, the bigger issue, I think you've got to understand that there was, prior to the TfL road changes, there was an element of sharing. I think the biggest thing about the next 6 months and a year plus is how we share the resources with each other. The moment you put those little cricket stumps on the road, the sharing is lost. You can't move into that area. There isn't the flexibility for vehicles to really let an ambulance through, or there is a different type of rules operating. So what TfL have done is, by putting those cricket stumps, they've created a mess there. and it doesn't help anyone. The sharing is much less, and that is why we have the chaos.
Okay, so
thank you very much. Councillor Carpenter,
about collision data.
Councillor Rigby, you had your question. I've got Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Patel. The reason that TfL is doing these things to the A24 is because it's a very dangerous road. There are lots of road traffic accidents, and it wants to reduce them. So you don't like the current set of measures. So what alternative measures would you suggest to mitigate the accidents on that road?
So I think, for your information, I've been the town centre chairman for the last 10 years, and we've looked at the TfL proposals roughly 3 years back, trying to reduce the traffic incidents, particularly to do with the bicycles. And I think one of the bigger issues is, once a bicycle leaves Tooting back, going towards Tooting Broadway, there is an element of speeding. And when you combine the speed with the poor light, a bit of rain, a bit of snow, and vehicles coming from the side, you have no other option but to have an accident. So it's really making it, pointing out to cyclists that this is a red zone area in terms of accidents. And I think even cyclists have that responsibility. And I am at the grass. I see 2-3 people having had accidents. I mean, I see 2 or 3 accidents a year where I have to go and sort of at least see how I can help. So I'm on the grassroots and I can see what is happening. And believe me, this changes is not going to make any improvement in the safety, because we see it already.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr.